Hey everybody,
So it went.
welcome.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Did you want to do the intro? You can if you want to.
No, I didn't. I forgot about the intro. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, welcome back to Mind Vector Podcast. If you've been with us, please give us a like and a subscribe if you've been enjoying the content. Leave your thoughts below in the comments.
So I wanted to ask you again about meditation. If there's anything in there about meditating on your own death
Yeah,
or your own demise. Yeah.
yeah, that's a there's an exercise like that in Buddhism. This is more so along the lines of thinking about it, and the exercises they would actually have monks sit around cemeteries and things like that, or imagine themselves losing everything. Like it's almost like it's the psychedelic world. You ever heard of ego death?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like trying to imagine what that would be like, so you can take the lessons from it that you're not going to be here forever, and how would you live if that were the case, and what would no longer be important if that was the case. Because when you think about everybody being on the clock, your values change. So
Right. So one of the most transformative courses I ever took in my career as a psychology student was psychology of death and dying. And in the course, they had us like literally journal, and we had to write our own wills. We had to write, just different topics on our death and like our family and life and just everything from the perspective of being dead. And it was just really like it changed my whole perspective on life in general, because it's like, damn, it's like the ultimate, you know, change.
the
Is
final
it?
destination.
Yeah. Yeah, you're dead. So that was one of the most important classes I think I ever took, if not the most important class.
Yeah, death is one of those things that does have kind of a liberating. If that sounds really edgelordy, but if you kind of think about it in its own way, it liberates you of bullshit basically, because you start remembering what really matters.
Right.
And when it comes to psychology, a lot of that's how I got into Buddhism, is because the crossover between psychology and Buddhism is pretty large. Like you're you can leave all the religious stuff, rebirth, karma, all of that out of Buddhism and still get a lot of value out of it, because it's almost like a philosophy slash mental health program
Yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah,
So
it's super reflective.
that's very close to what they try to teach monks when they're doing their death meditation, and the process is
Mm.
pretty similar. Like you imagine yourself getting into a coffin, and everybody around you is staring or crying, and if you've been an asshole, possibly cheering. So you have that, and you imagine it going dark, and it never returns. It just That's the end of that episode. So
For forever. But it's what's interesting is that it's death is like one of those things that most people don't want to think about or talk about.
a lot of
It's like it's just super uncomfortable. So a lot of people kind of like avoid thinking about it altogether,
yeah,
unless there's like a funeral going on and it's like, yep, we're here. This person died. But if you think about it, it's one of the best ways to like shift your mindset, because death in life, it's like you kill off all the bullshit and then you're just like reborn. You know what I mean?
yeah, like in Buddhism, there's a big focus on things having a cycle to them. So, with the Eastern religions, the cycle is kind of the third thing that they always include. And our way of thinking, we always focus on the beginning and the end. But the third portion of that is the continuation or the cycle. So, when you think of something ending, there's always something that can come out of it. And that's something I've been thinking about more when I think about Taoism. I got into reading a little bit about it after listening to an Alan Watts lecture where he brought up this thing called the negativity principle,
Mm,
and I couldn't figure out what he was talking about, so I tried to look it up a bit, and eventually I ended up just listening to the entire audiobook.
mm,
And basically, it's this notion that it's like a duality thing where the opposite can produce it's counterintuitive, but it's and that's what the entire Tao Te Ching is written as. It's written almost like a series of these events, like from war comes peace, and
Mm-hmm.
peace comes out of, I mean, war comes out of peace, and there's a cycle to these things. And when you kind of incorporate that on a larger scale, you can relax and realize that all of it's going to be okay because this is just how it goes. So
The calm before the storm and after the storm.
yeah, and there's another phrase too that after this storm, the sun always comes after the storm. That's the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. Can't rain all the time.
it can't rain all the time,
Yeah.
but
Oh, that's
it,
so good.
and if people are able to kind of take those lessons from realizing that nothing is permanent, they can
Yeah.
save themselves a lot of suffering. And when it comes with everything, it comes with relationships, it comes with
Raising kids
raising kids,
that
you know,
scream and cry.
it comes with just everything in life is like that, and one day it's all gonna fade away.
Yep.
So
Which is that's actually kind of like the mentality that I started shifting to whenever they're into chaos. When shit's hitting the fan here. It's like what would I rather be living this moment right now or them not being here at all? You know what I mean? Like if they had never been born or if I lose them in some way, like if they're just like some tragic accident happens or something. Like what's the worst alternative? And then it's like, oh shit, that just kind of makes me like kind of like wake up and like, okay, no, this is good. This is okay. We're
yeah,
imagining the worst case scenario.
and another thing that helps too in the moment is to realize that sometimes the suffering can bring you peace in the future. Like you kind of go through it in a backwards way. Like at least for me, I didn't know too many people that have died. The only people I knew really that died were my parents, but I wasn't really close to them,
Yeah.
and had a pretty bad relationship with my mother. So when she passed away, it was kind of a weird thing for me because I felt like there were things I was supposed to feel but didn't because the relationship was so bad. But I've seen with my other friends that are really close that have lost their parents that are still grieving.
Yeah.
Like I feel lucky that at a young age I had all those problems because I just went through the grieving process in a different way.
Right.
Because they have this phrase in Buddhism that the glass is already broken. It's just not everybody realizes it. Like
Yeah.
relationships, people, everything changes. Everything's in a state of flux. So when it came to that, I was lucky because I don't have to suffer from that grief. It's a little awkward because everyone's like, why aren't you grieving or whatever? And it's like, well, all the years of childhood, all the years of neglect and all these other things, they kind of, that's when I grieved. So I got all that out of the way at a young age. And
Yeah.
it was just the body catching up to the emotion, the quality of the relationship, so to say.
Mm.
So sometimes when bad things happen, if you start looking for the bright side immediately, that's how you can really change your mind. So, and it's hard to do because when shit's hitting the fan, you don't want to sit there and be all zen and philosophical and shit. But
No,
that's
it's
when you
hard.
really need it. So,
It's hard. It's like it's been a quick fix for me thinking of the worst case scenario alternative because I can't just sit there and sometimes I don't want to just sit there and take a deep breath and whatever and wait. But it's like instantly I would think of that. But there was a little bit of a resistance to it. And I didn't read about it. It just kind of popped up one day. It's like what would happen? I think I was washing the dishes or something. But um imagining if you only take it so far, you may think that you're idealizing the idea of them being gone. Like me, I'm talking about my kids.
mm-hmm.
But if you don't see it through past that, then I could see it seeming like I was wishing for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I,
if I just only if I only just touched on it and I didn't take it any further to where to the other side of the upside, then it would be like I would think that I was wishing for their demise, and that was not the case. So I
people
can see
wrestle
why
with a
people would
lot
shy
of.
away. Yeah.
That's another thing too. I like to emphasize that you are not your thoughts, because when people have bad thoughts, they immediately start the guilt cycle.
Yeah, I
And
was having that.
once you're like feeling guilty about a thought, then now you have thoughts of guilt, and it just creates another emotional cycle that's nothing but suffering and ruminating. So
Like especially when my first one was really little, when she was a little baby, and there was like sleep deprivation, all kinds of deprivation on my part. It was I thought it was I thought there was something wrong with me because I just wanted it to stop. And like the only way that I could see it stopping was for her to not exist in a way. And it was hard for a while because yeah, I felt guilty about it. And she was so little and like everybody thinks babies are precious and they're supposed to be like little rainbows and sunshine and whatnot, but I just wanted it to stop.
yeah, it's common.
It was
You
it
hear,
was a dark place for me for a long time.
yeah, and babies have this high pitched noise that just makes them.
There's something about their cries that triggers for me um like aggression. And I think that's like an instinctual thing because if you're not seeing your baby and suddenly they're crying, it could be danger. You know what I mean? So that instinct just kicks in that you have to act. But shit, it was just us in the house by ourselves. So there was that instinct would still kick up for me and then I'd be like pissed off for because the baby was crying. And it was just the baby crying. There was no danger. So it was kind of frustrating.
Makes me always wonder how humans survived. Like, I can imagine being out in the woods with this little thing that's just ringing a dinner bell
Yeah.
all the time. But
Well, you just put the baby on the boob and that's it. I mean, usually it's either hunger or they shit themselves
yeah,
or they're sleepy. But I mean, women just carry their babies all the time when until they're walking.
it's true. Then again, people used to have tribes and stuff like that. They had communities, so
Yeah. Yeah, the
animals were
village.
less prone to mess with them.
And then you can just hand off the baby to grandma or your sister or whatever and just
Make
take
more
a break.
babies.
But I was by myself. I was doing everything all by myself. So that was a load. It was a lot.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I know
But
when I
yeah.
was younger, my mom told me stories about that where she would just lock herself in the bathroom to get away from me. when
Uh-huh.
she was like, I don't know, like, well, when I was about 2 or something like that. So I was really young.
This
So
one just ends up banging on the door for hours.
that's what kids do. You ever see
Not
Family
affected.
Guy where Stewie's trying to get his mom's attention and he just says
Uh,
"mom" for like 3 minutes straight,
yeah, and she's just like laying there, like
dead inside.
waiting. That is so relatable.
She's like, I can't wait for this death thing.
Death can't come soon enough.
So
But yeah, I think a lot of people just jump to that immediately without seeing what could the other possibilities.
yeah, and that's kind of that's what life does. It's gonna sound like Mufasa, but cycle the circle of life. It
Circle of
creates
life.
space for the new. So
Hmm. Yep. So that's
it's
to say that there's nothing wrong with thinking that way, but you have to learn to use it in a constructive
constructive
way.
way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people get suicidal too, which I really don't think people ever get to the point where they really want to die. It's just that they
Mhm.
want conditions to be different.
Yeah.
Like, I think that suicidal feelings, for the most part, are an aspect of yourself that you wish you didn't have to deal with. Like, it's part of it's you wanting to kill a part of yourself,
Right.
and you probably don't know how to do it, so it gets kind of murked into you wanting to just end your existence, which that's a waste. So
Yeah. Well, you can't change anything if you're dead. If you're dead, you're just dead.
yeah,
That's the end. That's it. No chance for change.
yeah.
Never gave it a chance.
That was something I always felt bad about for like in Christianity. Like, it was always thought that if you kill yourself, that you go straight to hell because you can't repent. It's like, well, if
Mm.
you if you just get out of a brothel and get hit by a bus, you can't repent either. So
Uh,
it's like, wow. But
but also it's like squandering the gift that God gave you,
yeah,
life.
that's true.
So that's like the ultimate fu to
Yeah,
the higher power.
and I was always like kind of I would always overthink these things. I'm like, well, what if you're like about to die and you just do it? Like, let's say there's a serial killer or something that puts you in an oven, and yeah, you have to have a gun on you. You're gonna be like, oh, thank God I have this this way out, opposed to just baking slowly. You know?
Mm. But then some would say that you're undermining God's will.
Yeah, and that's part of why I'm not a Christian anymore.
Because what if he
So
sent down like an angel or something, an agent to like fucking save you, and you never, you still offed yourself. You know what I mean? When he was already on his way to saving you. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
true. You really never know until it happens.
Yeah.
But
If it's God's will, then it's God's will. You let it play out.
you ever see
That's
that?
what's supposed to happen.
You ever see the movie The Mist?
Sounds familiar, but I don't think I ever saw it.
Oh, the ending is pretty much that. Like it's a spoiler alert if you haven't seen The Mist. Yeah, it's not a great movie. It's okay. It ends like that. There's like this catastrophe happening, and things look glim, and basically someone ends up killing themselves, and right after that, help comes. So if they had held on for like 10 minutes more,
Ooh,
everything would have been okay.
yeah.
So I should
You
laugh,
just,
but that's life. Life is absurd and ironic on a macro scale.
uh-huh.
But
Ugh, messy stuff.
yeah, I haven't had to deal with that either. With I don't think anybody I've known has ever killed themselves. So I've been pretty lucky in that regards.
Mm.
Have you known anybody that's committed suicide?
No, they didn't go through with it, but they did attempt it. My mom slit her wrist, or not her wrist, but like the inside of her elbow, higher up, when I was about 9. And
Yikes!
then, so from there, she was institutionalized for about 3 months. So I was living with, we were already living with my aunt and uncle on my dad's side.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad had a great habit of just up and like leaving and going to Mexico for like a month. And I think just, she was just having like a really rough time with it. And I think there were some drugs involved as well. Like she's always been like she's always smoked weed and stuff, but I think there were some harder substances involved there where she was like going through a deep depression, and then so she slit her wrist, or not her wrist but her elbow. And then so she was institutionalized for a while, and then they kind of fixed her. And after she got out, my parents had like a huge blow up fight over, I don't remember what, but probably because he left and then came back and just everything was all hunky dory, whatever. So they never really processed that until after she got out. So that's like the only thing that I can recall as far as suicide. But they've always had like this self-destructive habits anyway. So, but that was a big traumatic thing for me because uh well, I don't think they really told me what had happened until we went to go visit her in like the hospital. We'd go visit her like every few days. They would allow visits, and I came to find out later. And then, but during that time, I was without her. Like I had never been without her for an extended period. So for 3 months, it was like a huge grieving process for me.
Yeah,
And I remember at one point they said that she was going to get out, and they were going to assess her first. And they said that she might get out of the hospital, and then they didn't. There was still something there that they assessed that she still wasn't right. So they kept her for like another month. And I was just fucking torn apart. So,
you said you were around 9 years old when all this happened.
yeah, I think it was like 9,
Did
probably 8.
At the time did they tell you while she was in the hospital, like specifically, or did you figure this out later?
I think I figured it out once she was already institutionalized. So I didn't find out right away after she was gone, after she like they institutionalized her, and I didn't see any of the like the gore and blood and stuff. Apparently, there was a lot of that,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
very
think
rough.
either my aunt or uncle had found her like on the bathroom floor or something, and
Mm,
they called the ambulance, and then they took her away, something like that. I'm not too familiar with the details, but I assume that's who found her and who took her, how she got institutionalized. But yeah, and it was like a long trip for us too. I don't think we had a car at the time, so we had to ride the bus all the way to fucking wherever the fuck it was. So that was like a big deal to go visit her anyway. So
yeah,
that was rough. And I feel like at that point there was like a detachment on my part. It was like a legit grieving of her dying, like having being separated.
hmm,
So I don't feel like after that I really attached myself, reattached the same way.
yeah. That's understandable when you go through that type of stress. If,
Especially with
especially
the
for that
knowledge
long, like,
that she did it to herself. So I was not happy with her for a while after that.
yeah, it's kind of a dark thing to realize, but that person in one way or another is partially like out the door, like,
Hmm.
so part of you starts kind of getting ready for that preparation.
Yeah, it was like touch and go for a while.
So
Like,
another,
look, are you gonna fucking try to kill yourself again? What the fuck? Just do it. Like anytime she'd get all crazy.
yeah,
But yeah, I had a lot of resentment about that for a while. Even not really acknowledging it, but just like feeling it. I don't know, my subconscious, I guess.
yeah, that's understandable. That's normal. People get resentful of people that are suicidal. That's why
Mm.
when people kind of talk about mental health, it always kind of rings empty to me because the average person they they don't want to deal with people that are mentally ill because we have a pretty sick society. Everybody's a
Mhm.
little narcissistic and
It might
suffer
rub
from
off.
anxiety. So
Yeah.
everyone's barely kind of staying afloat themselves. So you have
Yeah.
somebody else bump into you. It's like, oh, well, now you got to deal with this shit. So, and
Hmm.
it's, you people will call it selfish or whatever and say nobody cares, but that's how people are. Like that's the normal state of being, and it's just people start
Yeah.
drowning, and if they can't stay afloat, they start panicking and trying to lash out to anything that'll to hold on to anything, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's the people
That's you
around
and
them. Yep,
your ass too. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes they can pull you down too. So it takes,
Gotta watch out.
yeah, definitely. I remember
Yeah.
joking with a friend about the fact that they say that narcissists can become therapists. And I'm like, well, I think this it can be kind of useful because if you don't have the empathy, then you can be very clinical in these situations. You don't have to deal with all the emotional turmoil that someone that's in the maelstrom of emotion
Hmm.
is capable of subjecting you to. So
Yeah, feelings just get in the way a lot with that. I remember thinking when I was in college that I could not be a therapist. I was going through too much at the time anyway. So I tended to gravitate more towards like the research side of it just because of that. I was like, I don't want to fucking deal with anybody's stories and shit. Like, I can't. Mm-mm.
when I got into psychology. I don't know. It was like a bunch of just breadcrumbs that kind of led me there. Like everybody gets in for I think a lot of people get in because they want to figure out something about themselves. And me, since I
Oh yeah.
wrestled with depression and being suicidal when I was but like a teenager and early 20s and stuff like that, I I was trying to figure out why do I feel this way, and
Hmm.
I eventually started. It was kind of around a couple uh, couple girlfriends.
Mm.
I started reading some things that made me think more about how people's way of thinking works. Like one of the best books I read, I guess it was kind of that. Yeah, thinking back on it, it was probably the first like mental health book I read. It was a book about borderline personality disorder. It was called "I Hate You, Don't Leave Me."
I have that.
It's a great book, and that was after I read that book. It made a lot of things make sense. Like I
Hmm.
saw things that I was doing that um, I couldn't really I couldn't see the bigger picture of, because especially when you're drowning, it's harder to see, imagine what the fuck
Yeah.
is going on around you. But I was
Yeah.
young and kind of a mess in a lot of ways. So, but I read that book, and I was also dealing with girlfriends that were they were kind of messed up too, because
Mhm.
we were both on that same frequency. So
Mhm.
I got into that, and once you started fixing yourself, that's one of those things that it's interesting how your circle changes, because it's harder to relate to people. Like, it's hard to relate to the same people. You have to end up killing off those relationships. So,
Yeah. The
and if you can
it's for
appreciate if you can appreciate everything as a lesson or a potential teacher, you can frame these things in a way where they don't really make you sad to know that none of your relationships are permanent. So,
yeah. Right.
and you can
Yeah.
appreciate them too, because they're like a firework. You know, what the fuck would a firework look like if it never went away?
It'd just be
So,
annoying as hell.
yeah. So,
But yeah, try to extract the meaning out of whatever, situation. There's always something there. Make lemonade out of lemon.
yeah, definitely.
But more along the lines of like marriage advice, I've heard something similar that relationships cannot be unevenly yoked. And I think it's a biblical thing.
That
Um,
is, yeah.
that's to say
I don't
that
remember the
it,
exact quote, but that is a biblical quote.
yeah, that's to say that you have to both be working together for the same purpose, for the same goal. Like you can't, it just doesn't work if only one person's carrying the relationship or if the other one is, or, or even if you're just trying to like, I don't know, like go back to school and further your career and stuff like that. If the other person's not supporting you
In some
for
way,
the greater good, yeah, in some way, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna hold together.
yeah. If they're not entertaining or recharging you, then that's a sign that that relationship is kind of, it's not something you really need to hold on to.
And anytime that one or the other is trying to do more or whatever, it kind of throw things off balance. So there needs to be like some form of equilibrium. So there's always like an adjustment that needs to be made on the other person's behalf to accommodate. But as long as you're both working together, then that's the key thing.
Yeah, and
So same thing with friendships. It's like you were trying to better yourself, but they weren't. So it's like you kind of just have to, it doesn't stay.
yeah, like, and it's kind of weird when you get off that frequency, because I know after the 2016 election, since I'm a right leaning libertarian, it's all the flack I got for, plus I'm black, so not being a leftist, like, I had to deal with all the things that came up with my friends, and I went through a lot of different things at the time, and I remember one of my friends like saying it, like, you've changed, and I was on such a different way of thinking at that point, and it just more so confused me instead of agitating me. I'm like, well, yeah, it's good, because the only time you don't change is when you're dead, so not changing is death. So, and
Yeah.
him being such being how he was, I get the way of thinking, but you can't really change someone's way of thinking. When I was younger, after I started learning all those things about psychology, I did want to do something with it. Like, I
Hmm.
didn't know what though. Even if it was just kind of like learning how to hopefully provide my friends with some type of way of thinking that could help them feel better, or
Mm.
just having my goofy, absurd sense of humor, like just making people laugh whenever I can with terrible jokes. So, but yeah, when it came to all that, it's crazy, because when you start fixing those things about yourself, you can kind of spot things in other people, and especially if you're in like a chaotic household, if you start changing something about yourself, it's
Oh, they don't like it
they don't like it.
because you're reflecting. I mean, it makes their chaos all the more
Yeah, the
apparent.
brighter you get, the darker the shadows get. So
Yeah, pretty
it's that
much.
contrast becomes much more noticeable. Like, I know Jordan Peterson had a quote about, if you're in a fucked up household. Okay,
Mm.
that's not a Jordan Peterson quote.
Don't quote him directly.
Yeah, definitely not quoting him
Paraphrase.
direct. Paraphrasing the point. But Jordan Peterson, he said something to the effect that if you're in a messed up household and you start just trying to clean your room, you'll garner like all this negative attention. And I mean, I got to experience that firsthand when growing up with my mom, who was a hoarder, and once we got bed bugs, I started trying
Like
to throw away junk, and she threatened to call the police on me. So it's like,
literally, you
yeah.
were trying to clean your room.
So I was trying to clean my mom's room and some of the house, and so
Mm.
and that's the sad thing too, is that people don't really mean to be exploitive of one another. It's just they lack self awareness. Like if you don't have the capacity to think about other people, you have
From
all these,
their
yeah, from their
from their
perspective,
perspective.
you
Yeah.
have all these blind spots, and what you're
Yeah.
doing isn't really beneficial, but you'll be thinking that what you're doing is, because you can only see things from your point of view.
Yeah,
So
it definitely takes a bit of maturity to get there. Like I can remember thinking, feeling really pissed off, um, just because Jason didn't know what I was thinking. And then like one day I had this like just light bulb go off, like, oh, he's not a mind reader,
so
and I'm not communicating.
yeah, and the sad thing is a lot of people they don't get to the, not everybody gets that light bulb. They're just
Hmm.
like, man, everybody but me sucks.
Yeah,
And it's like a bunch of misanthropes
that's
that
a
walk around saying they hate people, but it's like, well, I'm sure you're pretty shitty too in a lot of ways, because we all suck in different ways. So
it's a painful way to go about living life.
it is.
It is painful.
And that's another thing too that kind of comes, like I saw that with a buddy of mine when I started talking to one of his younger brothers. He had shared with me a story about how he had been treated when he was younger, and my friend, his response was to instantly kind of shut down that way of thinking instantly, because it's harder to acknowledge that what you went through was, abuse. And people do tend to abuse each other even if they're not aware of it. And the fact that you think that you're not doing it ever is probably going to make you, it widens that blind spot for you to actually do it if you think that you're perfect. So,
Yeah. To poorly paraphrase Jordan Peterson, it's like if you're if you don't accept your shadow self and all if you don't see yourself as a villain, you're never gonna be able to what do you call it, surmount it, to
yeah.
overcome it, and to combat it, to
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah.
No, your blind spot.
And for me, definitely when I had like my politics change, I don't know, when I was a leftist, I used to just think that if we didn't have safety nets, that people would just die. Like that was how fucking deluded I was.
How
But
did we ever make it this far
it's like, yeah,
without safety nets?
but if these people will literally just fall over and kill over. They won't try to survive or anything. So, but that was my deluded socialist way of thinking when I was younger. But what what I kind of lost my train of thought. But going back to what you said about recognizing yourself, I know one of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate."
Ooh, yeah.
A lot of people feel like they're just kind of spun around in these circumstances because they walk through life with blinders on, and especially if you're dealing with someone that's suicidal. Like after Buddhism and libertarianism both kind of made me appreciate responsibility, and you start realizing that there's more freedoms in being able to be more responsible.
Yeah.
I realize that when people are in their darkest, that's one of the hardest things to commit to really get them to understand, is that probably 95% of the suffering in your life is created by you. So
Created by you and or not prevented when you could have prevented it. Like people have much more control over things than they give themselves credit for, just because shying away from responsibility being uncomfortable, but it's also empowering. Like I think a lot of people don't appreciate that about it.
yeah,
Like it can be tough. It's always going to be tough, especially at first when you haven't got the hang of it. But after a while, and you look back and it's like, yeah, I'm better for it.
yeah, it's a gradual thing. Like you start off small and eventually it changes. Nobody's perfect though. You know, if you try to predict and control every potential outcome in life, you'll probably go insane. But
Mm.
and that's another thing too. Trying to control everything is, it's kind of like um, like a marriage of anxiety and delusion. So
Hmm.
you have to accept that the unexpected will happen because it's just how the universe works. So
Ugh.
when, at least for me, what really got me out of like most of my depression and suicidal thinking when I was younger was just learning to kind of let go of things and to realize that nothing lasts forever. So if you're going through something bad, it ends because it started. You know, that's how everything works in our world. If
Yeah.
like they say in the Matrix, everything that has a beginning has an end. Neo. So
Well, when I had my angry period, it's like once you're in that frequency for so long, it becomes your norm. And it's kind of hard to imagine yourself feeling any differently, you know. So then that becomes your reality, but it's not something that you're not able to change. Like one of the things that even here just recently, like in the last few months, that I adopted into my mindset was gratitude and being grateful for XYZ, you know, whatever I have going on around me. Just appreciating the little things because what happens is like in your brain, it's impossible for you to feel angry and grateful at the same time. Like your brain, it just doesn't. It can't do it.
I'm trying to imagine
So,
the situation, and it's hard to imagine being angry and grateful at the same time.
yeah, you can't. So, if you just automatically flip that switch to, okay, what list the things that you're grateful for right in this moment at this time, then you start to feel a change and you start to feel a possibility of, you know, feeling better.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's been one of the most useful tools that I've adopted here recently.
definitely, it's like, like I said, if you can see something bad happening and you just kind of play it through your mind and start looking at what the good is that's going to come out of it, you'll relax a lot easier. Like I told you about that story, the egg, where the guy, his wife was relieved that he died in the wreck because now she doesn't have to divorce him.
Oh,
So if you can kind of own up to your thoughts and your emotions and understand why they are the way they are, you alleviate a lot of stress in your mind. And
yeah,
another thing too is try to be kind of very honest with yourself too. Like,
brutally.
yeah, well, I'm kind of going in a different direction, but yeah, being
Okay.
brutally honest with yourself, that's important. But what I mean too is to be really truthful in your way of thinking, and you start
Hmm.
breaking up like bad patterns of thinking that can get you sucked into depression. Like when
Hmm.
I was reading about borderline personality disorder, I dated a girl who got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and PTSD, and I read that book around when we started dating. I'd heard about it a little bit before, but it made me think of things a lot differently. So one thing that they use to help that is something called dialectical behavioral therapy,
Hmm.
and that's at least the way I understood it to be. It's like you kind of monitor your thoughts in a way to make sure that they're actually accurate. Because if you have like a thought like, "Oh, nothing ever goes right for me," well, that's not true. Because one, if you look around, there's a lot of things that are going well. Like you didn't die in a sinkhole that just caved in under you right when you said that. An asteroid didn't hit the planet, so there's a lot of things that are going right for you at the moment. So if you make
Yep.
it harder for your mind to have, I don't want to say dishonest, but maybe misinformed statements or things that just aren't as true as they could be. That starts to crack
Hmm.
up the darkness that can happen when you're in those bad states. So,
Yeah, your emotions are not the truth.
yeah, your thoughts aren't the truth, and your emotions aren't the truth, and neither of them are you. They're just kind of like things that happen internally that you experience, but
Hmm.
experience starts and stops. So that's an important thing
Yeah.
to always remember, and that's one of the cool things about life being uh, long or short, however you view it, is
Yeah.
that
The years,
change
oh, what is it? The
is
days are long, but the years are short.
yeah, exactly. So it's
Uh,
it's not it's not going to be forever. And whenever people are suicidal, I don't think that they are suicidal. I think they're just craving change. Like they're just really craving change.
mm,
So killing that part of themselves that's putting them in a bad place or a bad mind frame, absolutely, that's great. And that's probably what they want to do. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I'm sure that that's not exactly what they want. So,
mm. Yeah. Kill the bad parts, keep the good parts.
you ever
Because if you,
go on?
there's some people that try to like completely reinvent themselves, like after something happens. And I feel like that will backfire in most cases because it's just too much change. You know what I mean? Like you have to be intentional about it and you have to decipher what's working and what's not. And you have to be really reflective and in order to make those distinctions of what's working and what's not. But to just completely reinvent yourself unless you're like in an imminent death situation, it's like you want to be gentle with it. You want to make small changes, make small sustainable changes, and
Yeah,
eventually you'll get there.
you definitely don't want to overwhelm yourself if you're having trouble starting. That's like saying, I don't know how to swim, so I'm just going to jump into an
Jump
ocean
in.
with no one watching. It's like,
Oh
well, I
God.
mean, you're going to figure it out, or if you don't, then it won't be an issue for long that you don't know how to swim. So,
Yeah, you got to walk before you can run with that one.
what do you think about the whole assisted suicide thing?
Oh, see, we just got through talking about all that. I mean,
Because again,
I
I
have
try
a
not to be too dogmatic about my thinking because I think that's when you're capable of doing the most evil. But that is one
like
thing.
thinking religiously, you mean?
Well, rigidly thinking like
Rigidly, yeah.
whatever your personal code or lines are,
Mm-hmm.
always have a little bit of flexibility to them because
Flex.
things that don't
Yeah.
bend they shatter like glass. So
Mm-hmm. I mean, it depends on the situation. Like here lately, I've been kind of more skeptical about the medical community and doctors stuff in general. Like they don't know everything. They're just following a protocol and what they learn in medical school and, you know, what their higher ups tell them. And I mean, they have systematic ways of dealing with diseases and just problems that pop up. But so, I mean, they might advise pulling the plug on somebody that's been in a coma for X amount of time, and just because there's no sign of life or whatever, and then you get all these stories, you know, miraculous stories of people waking up years later. I mean, that's not.
oof, that's a rough one.
Yeah, that's what came to my mind about assisted suicide. It's like it's essentially the same thing. And I actually had an uncle pass away from a traumatic brain injury in a motorcycle accident in Mexico.
Mm.
So they pronounced him brain dead. They had to pull the plug for. I mean, he was brain dead. So they told them that there was no hope of him ever resuscitating or whatever. He was on assisted life support and all that. So I mean, it's rough because they weren't financially able to. It's different over there. So they weren't a financially able to sustain him anyway.
Yeah, I imagine that's expensive too if they're
Hmm.
having
To
to
keep him
pay.
alive, yeah. Yep.
The
So
Go on.
it's on a case by case scenario, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the important things too. Like people need to be willing to kind of talk to each other about the things that are not easy to talk about. Because at least for
Yeah.
me, when my mom died, we that was actually one thing we were actually good about is that we had talked about that beforehand. Is like if one of us were ever in a situation where we were gonna lose brain function in a coma or on life support, what would we want?
Mm.
And we ended up having that conversation because my grandmother was in a bad state in the hospital, and my mom was all freaking out and everything.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, well, she just praying. She's like, God, please don't make me have to make this decision because it's too big. It's
Ugh.
it's not something that she wants to deal with.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you guys never spoke about it? And she's like, no. And it's one of those moments where you kind of you kind of frustrated at your family for not being a little more
Clear about it.
I don't know, like
Right. Your
prepared. Like
yeah.
so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I asked my uncle, and he's like, I don't know. So I'm like, you guys, you guys are
You
all a
can't put
mess.
this on me. How are you gonna put
So,
that on the? Oh man.
so yeah.
I'd have
After
walked out.
that,
I'd been like, "Yep, figure it out. Peace."
I mean, I I basically told her my thoughts after because I'm like, if I was ever in that situation, I don't want to be brought back if I'm gonna lose brain function. I don't
Hmm.
I don't want
Oh.
to go through that if I'm going to be paralyzed or anything like that. I would just rather go ahead and pass on to the next life. So just deal with
What
the
if
next
you
set of
just?
experiences.
What if it's just like a stroke and you can like still recover some function after and
If I can't
you're.
walk, if I can't use my limbs, I wouldn't want to deal with it.
Mm. What if
Because
your speech is weird, like you can't, or like your memory, like some people that have strokes, they have trouble with thinking and just processing and talking and stuff like that.
probably wouldn't want to deal with that either. Because, I mean, you have to. I always think about quality of life over
Mm.
quantity of life. That's always my thing. So, that's one
Mm.
of my favorite Benjamin Franklin quotes is wish not to live long, but to live well. So,
Mm.
or as they say in rap songs now, I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
There you
So
go.
basically, that's my way of thinking. I lucked out with my mom that we had that conversation. So when she had her
Hmm.
stroke and the doctor said that hey, there's no way of coming back, I knew exactly what I needed to do, and
Yeah. There
there
was no
was
guilt there.
there was no guilt. It was like okay, well, I just got to do this. And even then, like I was kind of in a pinch because religiously, killing your your parents in Buddhism is a big no no.
Oh,
Yeah, like
did you ever talk to any of the Buddhist monks about it? Did you ever go back?
I was vaping, but
Hmm.
no, my vape is leaking. And these Nords they leak like crazy, but
Can't endorse the Nords.
I mean they're cheap, so that's the good thing about them. But
Mm.
but yeah, no, I didn't seek any counseling or anything like that. I just knew it had to be
Mm.
done, and I knew I wasn't going to get any wisdom from my uncle or my grandmother. Really, I decided just to go ahead and ask them about it. How did they feel in case one of us was in that situation? And my uncle, my uncle's like, well, as long as I got money in the bank, keep me alive.
He wants that. He wants to spend every last cent, huh?
Pretty much.
It's funny.
And my grandmother, she said no, that she wouldn't want to. My grandmother's super religious, so she was like, no, 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 God's gonna fix it. God's gonna fix it.
Oh wow.
And I'm like,
So neither
she,
of them wants the plug pulled if
yeah, but
it
legally,
comes down
the
to it.
decision came down to me, and I'd already known what my mom wanted, so
Hmm.
I was
Oh
able
wow.
to make the choice with a clear conscience.
Well, that's good.
But even in Buddhism too, like they don't encourage. There's kind of a debate on that. I heard
Yeah.
one monk. It was interesting how he phrased it. He called it masculine compassion versus feminine compassion.
Ooh.
And the story that he told was there was a pony that was born, a baby horse or young horse, and the thing was having trouble walking, and all the women in the, I don't know what you call a herd of horses. Is herd the right word? Probably. But
Uh, yeah, the
in
herd.
the community of horses, they kept coming to this little pony that couldn't walk, and they would nudge it and try to get it to stand up, and they never really could do it. So after a couple of days of them having that happen, the male horse just comes over and just stomps its brains in.
Oh my gosh.
So, well, see, and that's kind of interesting, dynamic between the
Reaction.
sexes. Yeah, is that the
Mm-hmm.
women are like, "Oh my God, you killed it" or whatever, and the guys like, well, "What? You want a predator to give it a slow death like this, or what?
Mm.
You gave it something quick and clean."
I mean, there's
So,
still gonna be scavengers coming around, but
well, I mean, I don't care what eats my body if I'm not here to feel it. so,
yeah, yeah.
so,
Oh, so the males. I don't know if this is the way the horse brain works, but
well, it's
for
yeah,
us higher level thinking beings, it's like end the suffering. Because you
yeah,
suffer too when you're seeing that. When you're seeing someone else suffer, your empathy kicks in.
for some
You
people.
know? Yeah. If you're not a psychopath. But it's like you're suffering too.
I mean,
Well,
even
even
even then, even if you're
even
not a
with
psychopath,
friendship.
sometimes if you know that someone's suffering is self-inflicted, you,
Yeah, it depends.
you have like a disattached, an unattached empathy. It's like
Hmm.
it sucks that they're in that they got themselves lost in that maze, but
Hmm.
you know that you can't fix the world.
Yeah. I had that going with a friend of mine that was struggling with alcoholism, and it was like I was just I just couldn't feel bad for her because the things that were happening were completely preventable. So I just kind of stopped talking to her. Just I ghost. I tend to ghost.
Yeah, that's what people do nowadays. With social media and the way everyone's connected, people just kind of cut each other. Which, if they're shitty people, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I had a lot of guilt about it for a while because I mean, I did try to like talk to her and let her talk out her problems, but it got to a point where it was always her talking about her crap, and it was just always a downer. It's like getting to be around her was always a downer, so I just didn't want that
Yeah, she was just taking and not giving.
leaking into me. Yeah,
That's what I'm
it was.
saying. Like when people are sinking, I mean, if you're not strong enough to swim with you and her, then you need to do what's best for yourself because that person,
Yeah,
they're just
yeah.
rocking the boat.
I was not emotionally equipped to deal with her stuff, yeah, at the time.
yeah,
But but I did have a lot of guilt about it because like I could have been a better friend. I could have tried. I could have done this. I could have communicated better. Like, hey, maybe don't always talk about your problems sometimes because I have stuff too. And I'm like one of those
you're
people
gonna be
who
like,
like will
well,
just
the world, it doesn't just revolve around you, right?
yeah, exactly. But how do you fucking say that? When you see somebody just
That
always
state.
going through stuff, yeah.
I
And
mean,
if I did feel like I was in a bit of a better position to be more accommodating that way, but I don't know. I'd had enough, and I was gonna have another baby, so I was like, I'm not gonna have time
yeah, you need to
to
focus your efforts
sustain
on your
this.
baby and your husband
Yeah,
and everything. So
yeah. It's like I got shit going on.
yeah,
I got real shit. I got real fucking problems here. Your little kid shit
you got to
that you got going on.
give her the thoughts and prayers, sending
So,
positive vibes your
good luck with that.
way.
Have fun with it.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
yeah,
gotta
well
leave the
wishes.
crazy behind.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what you're supposed to do when the society keeps producing more and more of them, and they're all entitled. So it's like
Mm.
I keep using the metaphor of like a maelstrom and sinking, but it's kind of interesting because yeah, if you're going down in a maelstrom, it does look like the world only revolves around you. So
Hmm.
there you go.
Yeah, it's like we have too much of a safety net to hit an actual rock bottom. Like the danger of losing your job or, just whatever may come as a consequence of not taking care of business or whatever. It's not as real as it used to be, I don't know, 100 years ago
Yeah,
or
it's a
even
lot
50 years
harder.
ago.
Like,
So we have too much of a safety net for people to really hit that true rock bottom for them to make real changes, I feel.
and people too. Like, if people could work together better, like they wouldn't really have that many financial problems, so to say. Like I would still like to see us not get taxed to death like we are now, but even
Mm.
then, as it is, if people were able to just cooperate better and there were families more cohesive, you could suffer through those bad times a lot easier because you'd have people there. It's just now we have a highly individualized society that
Mm-hmm.
keeps
No
people
support
just,
systems.
yeah, no support systems and people. Everything is just the government trying to force this artificial compassion. So
That's something that I noticed. I was just scrolling through YouTube or something, and I've noticed in like Asian communities, they're very family oriented. And the fact that that seemed to stand out to me is like a testament to how individualized we have become. Like, at least me personally, also. I don't really stay in touch with family that much, but it's also because they're toxic as fuck. like,
yeah,
like,
I mean, I lucked out. My parents kind of died when, my dad got murdered when he was when I was in middle school, and then my mom, she died when I was middle aged. So
Mhm.
like I was well into adulthood when she died. So my relationship, it's I don't get what Bruce Wayne is always complaining about. So
I don't know if I should say it, but if you remember when we first kind of started chatting, and I was still living at my mom's and dealing with her bullshit.
yeah, I remember what you told me.
What did I say? Wait, what do you remember?
You think it would be kind of easier if they were to go ahead and move on. So
Well, it was around the time that your mom passed away too, and I
yeah,
was like, "Damn, he's lucky."
yeah. See, like if you can appreciate those differences in people, like there's zen in that. There's a fucking
Yeah.
reason why all these zen riddles sound like fucking jokes because life is it's funny.
I was like, "You lucky."
'Cause I remember when I was younger, one of my best friends, like I used to like he was always with his family, and me, I didn't have any friends really. I was a loner, and I always
Hmm.
wish I had that. And now it's like the opposite. I appreciate not having to deal with people I don't like. It makes it kind of rough sometimes because I feel like I have to, and I'm not like I don't think I'm an abrasive asshole or anything like that, but I feel like I have to kind of play society when I'm around people and compensate
Mm.
for niceness, and I don't like that. I don't like having conversations that are just people making sounds with their heads. So
I hear, I hear noises, but I'm not really there with you. Yeah, I get it.
so
Yeah, I just have too much going on to really have time for a social life at the moment. But hopefully that'll change, and I mean that'll have to change
and
if I
it's
go in the direction that I need to go.
uh, and and saying all this though, I don't hate people. I actually I think
I don't
people
either.
I
Yeah.
think people are capable of quite a bit. It's just it's where they walk around with blindfolds on, and then they just say stuff that they don't think about what's coming out of their mouth. So
It's like everybody's saying shit that they think other people wants to hear, and none of it is genuine.
yeah, exactly. You get a
It's just noise.
society of smiles with tears behind it. So
Mm. The what is it called? The tragedy of the clown or whatever.
yeah, it's yeah. I don't know what the
The,
phrase is, but I get what
the
you're trying to
clown's
get
plight.
across. I know it was an Eminem song, or was that Mariah Carey and Eminem when they were having their feud that no one cares when the tears of a clown fall or something.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's kind of true. Like if you're always emotional, then it's kind of you eventually just tune it out. So
Well, because everyone expects the clown to always be happy and cracking jokes and shit, you know?
yeah, I remember this girl I knew for a while. She she was always just a mess. Like every time there was a social gathering with all of our friends and everything, she'd always just ended crying and drunk and on the floor or whatever. So I'm like,
Oh,
okay, well,
wow.
this is just how these people are. But she, sh there was a time when another one of my friends, I was at his house. He was playing Rocket League, and he said something like, "Oh, she's crying." And I'm like, "Oh, what is she not crying?" Like not to be mean or anything, but it was just like, yeah, I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
That happens.
You get used to the way that that person's behavior
Yeah. That's why I don't know some of these like reaction videos on social media where it's just like a woman that's outraged and she's just crying. I'm like, okay, well, it's about how that goes.
Yeah. Social
So
media is funny because you only see a snapshot of that person's life. It's not it's not all there it's not all transparent. It's just what they want to show you, what they want to upload.
one of my
And
buddies from when I was younger, I lost touch with him. I hate that I lost touch with him, but we had a conversation about that. We were trying to think of like the evolutionary reason for crying, like why does it exist?
hmm.
Because it seemed like it doesn't mean anything. Like what you have like water coming out of your eyes and water salty, and it makes it hard to see. It's like why does this happen? And we couldn't really figure it out. Then finally he said it's I think it's just a signal that you need help. And I'm
Mm.
like that actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure. The babies.
the
It's a
women,
remnant. No, the remnant of babies.
yeah,
Our
well
moms
both.
would take care of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean both. Like it's just supposed to be when you're young or incapable. That's really the only thing you can do. And I'm not cry shaming if that's a thing. And I'm sure the leftists will turn that into a thing sooner or later. It's fine to fucking cry, but at the same time,
Everybody cries.
yeah, everybody cries.
Everybody farts. Shit.
It's fine to have your catharsis or whatever. It's just
Hmm.
also try to just see what you can do to feel better. So
Yeah. Don't linger in it.
yeah, because dwelling it doesn't do anything if you're just going through the same thoughts and not thinking of doing anything new. And it's hard. Like it's hard to sometimes see it because your habits build walls around you. It becomes your programming. The more you do the same
Hmm.
things, and it's harder and harder to change.
Yeah. We have, I heard it through, it's a neurology thing, but we have like these mirror neurons
Hmm.
that were, when we see somebody behaving a certain way or talking a certain way, like inflections, like more in like a workplace environment, we adopt that way of being to, I guess, fit in. You know what I mean? The mirror neurons make us. It's just like an automatic neurological thing. So
That
in
kind
a
of makes me think
way,
of. Go on and finish your thought.
getting away from certain crowds and certain people is breaking away from you wanting to
Those
be
bad
that way.
patterns.
And then, but not only that, taking it to the next level and surrounding yourself with better people will make you better in that same, on that same plane because of mirror neurons. So surrounding yourself with a better crowd is like it is a fix. But you have to be outnumbered. That's the numbers part of it is that it has to be a literal crowd of people.
Yeah, I've always heard that expression that you're the average of the five people or so that you spend the most time with.
Yep.
So that's what I was gonna
Yep.
interrupt with, but pretty much on the same vibe there.
Which is why I'm kind of looking forward to starting a career in real estate and stuff because I want to get around there. It seems like a really positive crowd because they're all working together. There's no it's not a competitive thing. It's like they have to work together if anybody wants to win. So it's a very um it's like a team. It's like a big team. There's a lot of positivity in it. So I kind of look forward to that aspect of it.
That's a good environment to work in because it
Hmm.
kind of sucks working in an environment where everyone's trying to make everybody else look bad and make themselves look better. Like
Right?
I remember back when I
Yeah.
worked surveillance for the jewelry corporation, I was one of those things, just dealing with all the gossip and stuff that I really didn't care about. And then if I didn't talk to someone enough, they'd get offended and start crying to the managers. Jeez.
Hmm.
So
Which I think a lot of companies do. They do like seminars for like team building exercises where they put the people that they want working together, working more efficiently and better into situations. Like they go to like an offsite uh,
like a
boardroom, basically, or like a game room or something like that, where they put them into like these scenarios they get to play around, and it's team building, you know. And then they come back and they're better at it. They're better at their work, and they're all working together. But you have to put them in those situations outside of work for that to happen.
Yeah, for them to form some type of bond. I think that
Yeah.
happens a lot on sitcoms where the companies will go like on a team building retreat or something like that.
The
They did,
Office.
they did that on The Simpsons.
Did they?
Burns had them go on a skiing retreat or something like that. They went to a ski resort.
Uh-huh.
It was that episode where with Flanders where he's like, feels like I'm wearing nothing at all, nothing at all. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was that same episode. But yeah, that's a common TV trope, and it's true. It's good to have. It's nice working around people that are on the same page and having a good team. Like one of my
Hmm.
last jobs, I actually liked the team I was working with. They were all pretty fun, except for one girl. She was, I don't know, I don't know if something died in her or what the deal was with her.
But yeah, that job was more physical than your cubicle job.
Yeah,
So it's funny. It's funny to me that just being around and moving things around and everybody working together was a team building exercise. Way.
that's true. Like a friend of mine had been recommending that I watch Office Space, the movie,
Hmm.
and I finally watched it, and it was kind of similar because offices are just weird places. You see all these signs saying "smile." All these women have like "be positive" written on their desk. It's like all
Well,
these
it's
little
such a
mantras and
like
stuff, but it is
it's
like
such a sterile environment that like your brain wants to fill it with whatever, just something.
yeah, but it's
I
it's,
can
it's kind of weird to
imagine.
me that everybody's just all putting up the same thing, so it looks kind of culty. So, but
Yeah, but I can imagine like in an office where there's not a whole lot going on as far as action aside from the dry
yeah, people still want to
day-to-day
show
stuff.
their individuality. Like you'll have some girls who have like a pierced eyeball and orange and purple hair or something like that.
Pure cyber.
So, but yeah, what I really related to that movie is that you know after that job ended, a friend of mine I went to he tried me out at helping him do his fencing gig, and we were outside when it was freezing or when it was muddy, and it was still kind of fun. Like it was crazy.
Hmm.
It was a huge contrast. And I
Hmm.
remember like my first day, he brought along another one of his coworkers who didn't speak much English, and I'm sitting there trying to lift all these T posts, and these are pretty fucking heavy. I
Uh-huh.
was trying to lift like I don't know, I think like 3 or 4 at a time or something like that, and my other friend was carrying two, and he's like, "Bring more," and I'm like, "How many do you need me to bring?" And he yells back, 15, and I'm like, 15. And then I didn't know it at the time, but he was just messing with me. He yells back 50. So I said, at first I said 15, shit. And then he goes 50. And then I'm like 50, fuck. And his friend that didn't speak English hears it, and he just started laughing. The rest of the day he's like 15, shit, 50, fuck. So yeah, I think when you're all stressed out and stuff like that, and actually moving around, it's a little harder to let the micro bullshit get to you. So everybody's just having a little
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, for sure. There's less room for psychological games when you're actually getting shit done.
Yeah, within the call center though, it's just ugh.
Yeah, there's nothing going on, and then your brain just takes over and your mind.
And you can't have any real conversations about anything because if you disagree with somebody, they'll be like, "Well, you're using colorful language and you're can't."
Calling up HR and shit
Yeah, exactly.
every 5 minutes.
So, like, I had a coworker back at the office job. They had asked me what I did over. I don't know. Like, I think it was. I don't remember. I came to work or something. Like, oh, I was like, well, what'd you do for your day or something? And I said, oh, me and a friend, we went to the shooting range for 4th of July. And she just, like, freaks out and starts shivering. I'm like, well, should I get some holy water or what's going on there? But,
Oh, sheltered self.
yeah, so it's. People were loopy nowadays.
Well, yeah. I think a lot of the people that work in office
Go crazy.
capacities, they like jump off the top of the fucking building.
Yeah, I think
They're like, fuck this. This is not gonna
One of the Asian countries, they put nets. It's kind of messed up, but
Oh,
they put nets
oh
around the
no.
building so the workers can't kill themselves. You get back to work.
Yeah, those
It's like
factory
God.
jobs are basically slave labor. No way out.
Yeah, I think that
That's
originated
that's one of
from.
the big that's one of the big controversies for Apple is that they employ China manufacturers, um, and that they have that going on. But I think as far as like the as far as the conditions at the Apple factories, they're good. They're as good as it gets for them. So
I wanted
I
to
don't
read
know.
more about corporation cities. I didn't know that those were actually a thing.
Mm,
I saw that thing lately that Toyota, like at the I forgot what the CES, they showed off basically these things that they wanted to start testing. At I think it was Toyota has their own city and they have their employees working there. They were going to have drones and electric cars and stuff running around just to
yeah.
test the area. And I'm thinking, that
Mm,
sounds kind of cool, but kind of creepy at the same time. Like, even the anarcho-capitalist part of me, it kind of likes it because it's cool in its own way. But I also kind of worry about something like China. So, but if people are actually collectively responsible, they're like, hey, we won't work for this price, then the corporations can't jerk them around. Just like with the government too, if people decide that they don't want to allow something, then it won't be. But
mm.
cooperation is the hard part.
Yeah, I feel like people would have less personal freedom if they're in something like that. Just because of the way the corporations want to run things. It's like there's too much power there. Like I
Yeah,
know in China they're already implementing the what is it called? Like the Face ID and stuff and like what is it called? Like a
biometrics.
personal profile like online. What is it called? Credit something. Like
The
social
social
credit.
score.
Yeah, social score.
Yeah, that's
Like shit like that. That's like kind of like mm-mm.
alrighty. So we're hitting the 1 hour mark. So wanted to thank you guys for listening. And if you enjoyed your time here, please give us a like and a subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. We are now on Spotify and we're working on trying to get on more platforms. And we will see you guys in the next episode.
Don't die until then.
Don't die.
Later.
And if you're feeling suicidal, just figure out what you want to change. That's the key.
Yeah. Just
Thought,
know that it's not for forever.
thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers.